Okay, so where were we? I was talking about the politics, which is underlined in the or what we call as the gender politics, which is at the very core of how Butler is differentiating between gender, sex, and whatever she's doing. Now, the question is, till now we have seen that neither gender nor sex, out of both these two constituents, none of them are natural. But the question now here comes that if neither gender is natural nor sex is natural, then how it is that we think of them as natural? How are they naturalized? How are they naturalized or put in a natural way in front of us? In the very beginning of the book, Gender Trouble, if you read the very first chapter, Beauvoir is talking about one very important concept, that is representational politics, okay, or the identity politics. What does it mean? It means that before we actually begin to live, there is a particular norm regarding gender, and these particular norm of what a gender should be, though it seems and though it is projected as natural, it is not natural, and rather it is actually the production of the power dynamics which is at work. I know this terms it's being a little difficult for you to understand. You have to understand that to understand this concept, I just very quickly want to go to another very important thinker, post-structuralist thinker of the age, and that is Michel Foucault. And you probably might have heard his name. Michel Foucault came up with very important concepts like power and discourse, which are very integral to the understanding of identity politics or representational politics, or to understand that how with the help of power and hegemony, gender and sex, which are not natural and constructed things, they are put in front of us as natural components. We naturally begin to think that we should be shy as girls. Who told you to be shy as girls? Okay, so here is a requirement to understand the concept of power and discourse. Now, what is a discourse? Discourse, in very simple term, it is knowledge, the knowledge which operates within some limitations set by the society. That is discourse. Discourse is your understanding of things. Discourse is your knowledge regarding things, but that knowledge is not a pure knowledge. That knowledge is guided by the power principles which is at work in the society. Okay, therefore, it is the heteronormative, heterosexual system of the society which formed the rules in such a manner, in such a hegemonic manner, that we fall a prey to it, and we begin to think that it is natural. This is called the naturalization of these things. Okay. Whenever a thing is represented, for example, the idea of woman. Gender Trouble starts with a question that who is a woman? Now, who is a woman? How can you define a woman? The moment you want to define a woman, it takes you to the sphere of gender. Okay. So how will you define a woman? So as the Butler says, that the moment we need to represent or reproduce this concept of women, you are not only mimetically reproducing or representing it, but rather at the same time you are creating the picture of a woman, creating a projection of the women, and adding some newer attributes or some other attributes to the conception of women. Okay, So women or man, they are not pre-discursive issues, pre-discursive norms. Okay, they are constructed. Gender is constructed, but they are constructed within the guise. With the help of the power dynamics and hegemony in such a manner that when it is presented in front of us, we begin to feel that it is naturalized. You cannot question. Okay, when something is served in front of you, cooked by the power dynamics of the society, it is presented, it seems to be so natural that you cannot question. You cannot question it. Okay, so this is what that happens in power politics, in the representational politics and in the identity politics. This is the mechanism due to which gender and sex have been thought of as natural things. But the question is why they did it. Why this naturalization of the unnatural concepts like gender and sex, which never existed probably? This is to maintain the division of the binary structure, the man and woman. If man had to focus, had to keep themselves as the focus, had to keep themselves as the central figure, if a perfect particular structure has to be maintained, okay, if the hierarchy has to be maintained, then this heteronormative design is very important. The moment the homosexual design comes into the forefront, that authority that the man occupied, it spreads out. Okay, for example, there is a term called, and after Gender and Trouble came up, the book came up, we can see that the field of homosexual studies or gay and lesbian studies, it developed hugely. Gay and lesbian studies is a completely different, it's a different zone which probably has its connection with feminist studies. In the book Peter Berry, you will find that there is a particular chapter on gay and lesbian studies. So there is a particular term called LGBT, okay, which means lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and now this term has been actually extended just a few time back, and it is now called as the LGBTQIA. Okay, Q for queerness, I for intersex, and A for asexual. Okay, so what does this mean? We started our discussion with a question that can there be two genders? So ultimately we can see that the sexual desire of a person cannot be confined within this heteronormative and binary structure of masculine and feminine. A person can have a desire which can be so multifaceted. In fact, a person cannot have any desire. If a person is not having any desire, then how will you judge his sex or his gender? So these are some of the questions which came up. And when this kind of question comes up in a homosexual design, then the authority, the power of that author figure, the power of man, it disrupts. Then man is not the central position anymore. Just imagine why a woman is dependent on a man. Okay, because gender, one reason is this. So the society is constructed in such a manner, and why this structure? Because sexual differences are there, and a man is sexually dependent on a woman. Woman is sexually dependent on a man. But what happens if a woman is no more sexually dependent on a man? Then what will happen? Then in lesbian studies you will see this, or if I talk about the French feminist Hélène Cixous, Lucy Irigaray, they have actually talked about this entire thing very beautifully, that when women, or why people are so much against homosexuality, the moment a homosexual relationship comes into play, then the requirement and the need and the authority of the male power, it somehow disrupts. And if this disruption is something which the male-centric, hegemonic, patriarchal society cannot survive, and that is why people were so much vehement. They are so much against the concept of LGBT. Okay, so that is somewhere we have come to understand that how the notions of gender and sex, they are so much constructed. They are not as real and as natural as we have been thinking of them to be, and this is what Judith Butler in her work Gender Trouble she talks about. Now there are a few other things which I just, as I told you, that I'll just touch upon, that is écriture féminine or gynocriticism. It is mainly about the modes of writing, as Virginia Woolf has also mentioned. Similarly, this French feminist Lucy Gray and others, they believe that language itself has been designed by the male-centric society in such a way that women do not have any scope of expressing themselves. Okay, that is why they wanted to craft a language in such a manner which would be perfect for the use of women only, for narrating the tales of women. And women need to write their bodies. There is a phrase like this in écriture féminine. What does it mean? It means that with our language we will tell our own tales, because from the men writing our stories, when the man is writing our story, they could never write a story in the manner in which we can only be the voice of ourselves. Okay, this is what mainly écriture féminine deals with. Similarly, Ellen Showalter's concept of gynocriticism also talks about this very notion, where if men comes up with the penis as a symbol of pen and their writing and the creative powers, then we have our wombs of creation. Okay, and this is how both of them are brought to at a balance. But my topic basically, my focus one was on gender and sex, okay, and the constructedness of this notion, and how the entire notions, these notions are dismantled, and newer concepts they have come up, challenging the earlier patriarchal convention of binary genders. Okay, so that much. Thank you. Okay, next we will actually be talking about the post-colonial. Okay, because I have Derek Walcott to do with you. So as I will do this poem, one particular poem of Derek, I think A Far Cry from Africa is there. So we will talk about Derek Walcott, and talking about Walcott requires us to study post-colonialism. So it will be good for you, because I'll do post-colonialism a bit, without which we can't start Walcott, and then we will do Walcott. Okay, so both the things can be done all together. Okay, so till then, bye bye, and please go through these lectures. Okay, it is very important.